It is my pleasure to be here with you all tonight. I know it takes a lot to get folks inside a basement auditorium when the weather is as nice as it is in New York City right now. Let me start with you, Sheila, if I may. For folks who don't know, as we heard, Sheila founded Care.com and her new venture is called Ohai.ai. You really are a pioneer in this space of helping people understand technology and apply it to our actual lives in ways that we need it with caregiving. You've launched companies that have revolutionized the use of technology to make family life easier, and who doesn't want that? Tell us a little bit more about how you launched Care.com and now Ohai.ai. And just so for folks who aren't familiar, what do these services provide?
Yeah, so Vicky, I really got into this space because of the proximity of the problems that I personally experienced. So I got pregnant. My husband is here in college between my sophomore and junior year. We've been married 34 years. And I had Catholic parents, didn't talk to me for a year. And it was a very difficult scenario for us because I was also an immigrant born and raised in the Philippines. And so we didn't have a lot of care. And then I pursued my graduate degrees at Harvard and started to teach two courses that thankfully they don't teach anymore. Information age businesses, we're dating ourselves, I'm an OG, right? As well as women building business. And I wrote a business plan that was actually trying to solve real estate, and it was called Metromove, and it was gonna be like Zillow. But instead I said, given my own personal experience, so many families were struggling to find care just as much as I was as an immigrant. And that's when I took my background in business and technology and applied it and founded Care.com and created a marketplace that then eventually we took it public and then sold, and we grew it to 20 countries and 35 million members around the world. And today it is still serving so many families. The most gratifying thing for me is running into people, just like in the green room, where someone will say to me, my gosh, thank you so much. I think it was Victoria. Thank you so much that I have a 6-month-old or a 6-year-old now, and we're able to find care. So for me, it's the proximity in my experience. And Ohai is the same. Ohai.ai is solving the humanity within AI and the mental load that families go through. So much of AI is invested in productivity at work. I'm trying to resolve productivity at home. I've always believed in the care economy. So 4.8 hours of unpaid labor that women spend at home. If we freed up that 1 hour of labor, that is $1 trillion of GDP per year.
Wow.
That's massive.
And so for folks, I think a lot of people are familiar with Care.com. It is a place where you can go and find a vetted caregiver for your family members. What does Ohai.ai do? Especially because I think people are a little intimidated by AI, especially welcoming it into your home.
Yeah, it's really solving productivity in the home, and it's a virtual assistant that takes away the mundane task every day. Probably the most one that people resonate with is an 11-page newsletter that you get an email from school that is in 8 size 10 font, and you miss everything. Guess what? AI can read that entire email. You can forward it to Indra at Ohai.ai, right? And then we read that email on behalf of all the activities in the school, and then we put it on your calendar. You could take a picture of any document, PDF or an image or even illegible calendar, and we'll read it and put it in your calendar. And then it manages conflicts. It even does groceries for you, plans all those different types of things that you just need to free up your mind so that you can focus on having dinner every day with your kids, focus on their nutrition, focus on reading books, and so that we can stay connected. And this is the #1 crisis families are going through, right? Vivek, Dr. Murthy actually said the #1 thing that impacts our society is parental stress. And it impacts our next generation. So if we freed up our time and freed up our minds, we can actually raise children and feel great about it.
I'm kind of sold now because you've made it sound really accessible. That's generally what I try to force my husband to do, is figure out the emails and do the calendaring.
It delegates really well.
Yes.
To your husband and your hubby and your partner.
There's a real mental load. We hear a lot about that, especially on social media, and typically it's the women that carry that mental load. Let me bring you into the conversation, Indra. For folks who may have read your memoir, My Life in Full, in it you take us through your life, your childhood in Chennai, Your formative years, your learning, your scholarship at Yale, and then your entry into the workforce via BCG. You worked at Motorola, and of course, we all know you from PepsiCoo. I think this is a really interesting question because you were moving in so many spaces where you were the only person who came from your background, who looked the way you did right when you entered the room and sat down at the table. What did you bring from your cultural identity that helped you in those spaces? And what did you leave kind of behind? Because I wonder if sometimes you didn't really lead with identity like many young people these days do.
Great question, but before I answer that, I have a question for Sheila. Sheila,
We've had conversations about hair,
but
right?
I have an interesting question for you because I've seen all these studies which says if you freed up one more hour of a woman's time, it's $1 trillion of GDP.
Yeah.
Is the assumption that freed up 1 hour, I go work in the office?
No.
So what am I doing in that 1 hour?
So that 1 hour productivity is, you have the choice. I've always believed in choice, just like here.com.
What if I just want to relax?
Choice. I'm sorry?
What if I just want to
Relax,
chill?
exactly that.
Then where is the $1 trillion
but
coming from?
Because, in fact, we've seen it even with caregiving, is the presenteeism and overall creativity and productivity if we get to relax. You know the data says that if you take time off, even a nap in the middle of the day improves your overall productivity.
Yeah, no, I'm asking it as a genuine question, not to be nasty about it, because I've read so many studies about if women were in the workforce, it's $3-4 trillion. It's great. But the women already doing the work at home, is it that plus second job that you have to do to unleash $3 to $4 trillion? The math doesn't add up for me. So I'm glad you explained it to me. Thank you.
It's absolutely a women's choice.
Yeah. Second is, for those of you in the audience, I know the reason I'm not smiling at you or giving eye contact, I can see nobody.
I know, it's really
Because
hard.
of
The
the
can't see
spotlights
any
are
of you.
killer.
Because of the light, I just see one big blob. So I'm sorry. So now let me answer your question.
She's smiling inside.
That's right. I'm now going to answer your question. When I started my life in corporate America, this is way back in 1980, there was nobody like me in consulting, or when we were in boardrooms with clients, there was nobody like me. And there's nobody like me on many, many dimensions. There was no immigrant, a person of color from an emerging market, a woman, and on top of that, a badly dressed woman, okay? If I look at my pictures on those days, look, you all take it for granted when you look at beautiful pictures of, women dressed and professional women, and you have so many aids that can tell you how to dress. In those days, it was just not there.
It was just shoulder pads.
And I have so many of them. Yes.
I relate.
And they would slip and you try to push them back. How would you know?
I came up in that time too. I came in, pantsuits and shoulder pants. Casual corner and petite sophisticate. That's where I live.
But dressed so badly. And dressed badly because we couldn't afford to buy good clothes. Second, stores didn't have good, inexpensive clothes for professional women. And third is that growing up, the only thing I heard from my parents was, stitch clothes 2 sizes bigger because you'll grow into it.
Yes.
And so all my clothes, every one of my clothes sort of hung on me because I forgot that I'd fully grown, all right? And so I don't know how people put up with me looking like that. Mm-hmm. I knew that I was a misfit from the looks perspective.
Sure.
And so I had to make up for it by being very good at the content and what I was contributing. So I overdid the studying the industry, really figuring out how to contribute to the client. Mm-hmm. So much so that over time I found an interesting phenomenon. When my father was dying of cancer and BCG gave me 6 months off with pay, I was working on 2 clients at that time. I thought the clients would say, fine, Indra's leaving, let's replace her with somebody else. The clients actually said, let's put the assignment on hold till she comes back. You see,
that's incredible. They had that much faith in you.
And they were willing to delay their study. So I had the luck of the draw there, but I think I had to make up on content and contribution what I lacked in every other way. And I was such an anomaly. And I did not try to pretend to be, to fit in. I did not. My accent was still heavy. Not too heavy, but heavy enough. And clearly, when you walk in, people go, oh my God, what is this?
So it sounds like you were very self-aware. You knew where you didn't match, as you said, you were out of place. Was there a time, can you tell us about a time where you felt like that hurt you, and how did you overcome it, aside from just outworking everyone? Like, how did you have that kind of a thick skin and that self-confidence to say, I'm not like all the others, but here are the things that I bring, and even in the face of no, or in the face of somebody discriminating against me, or maybe not giving me the benefit of the doubt, I'm gonna figure out my way through or over or around this obstacle?
I just kept working. Literally, that's all I kept doing. I worked, I went home. There was no social
There was no
life at
work-life
work.
balance
Beg
when you
your
were
pardon?
25?
What is work-life balance? I'm sorry.
For our younger members of the audience, and I
Yeah.
think this is interesting, and Sheila, you please jump in, but I think there is, they are amazing. We could spend hours and hours. I'm fascinated by everything you've accomplished and how you got where you got, because it was probably quite a slog, and also different because you didn't necessarily have a network of people that were lifting you up. But I do think when you talk to the younger generation, sometimes people want what you have now, and they don't see what it took to climb that mountain. So to the best that you can, kind of remind us, it was a lot of hard work.
It was an incredible amount of hard work. I spent, I think, 3 years with just 3 suits. And the first 2 years were just 2 suits, a beige and a black, and I would, cross-match them.
Two sizes too big.
2 sizes, I mean, they hung on me, let me put it that way. And that's all I lived with. The hem would fall down, I'd hold it up with Scotch tape.
And
That's all I had.
I don't think I learned to wear makeup until later even. I didn't
agree.
even focus on it at all. I just worked. And I didn't sleep very much because I had young kids at home. And I remember when we were taking Care Public, which is really sad because I only learned of this statistic later that I was the 7th woman who was going to take a company public since the 1600s. Okay? That's crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah,
That is
that's amazing.
crazy. Crazy. But this is how crazy it was. I'd been running care.com. We're about to take it public. I'm doing a non-deal roadshow. I go in, I go straight to the bathroom, and then I go to the coffee pot, because I didn't have time for bio breaks, and I offer everybody coffee, because I thought, the Asian thing, I was going to be nice, whatever.
Hospitality.
And they shake the CFO's hand, they shake the CTO's hand, and they come to me and they're like, you must be the assistant from the bank. And I literally, with grit, focus on substance, I just looked at him and I did it kindly. And I said, no, I'm Sheila Lirio Marcelo. I'm the founder and CEO and chairwoman of care.com. But I didn't do it angrily because back then, for what point?
Wasn't going to get
It
you
wasn't going to
anywhere.
go anywhere, right? Instead, I had to answer the questions and answer them well and know that I had my answers all together. And then I did all the research and I did the work. It's all about the work.
Something both of you have, you've both been able to build families in addition to these very successful careers. And I ask this not just for the working women in the audience, but for the working men too. How do you do it? How did you do it? And how do you keep doing it? Because I think that's a real challenge for people. They put off having their families. Rates of IVF have gone up. Infertility has gone up. It is one of the biggest challenges I hear among 30 and 40-something professionals is they've worked so hard at the career part of it, and then when it comes time to build the family, they don't know how they're going to do it all in that time period. Because that decade of the 25 to 35, even 40, is a busy time if you are working in the professional world.
Well, I wanted children. I married the right guy. That's a crapshoot, but I ended up marrying the right guy, okay? Very supportive. I'm sorry it is, okay? Very, very supportive.
Yes.
And we both had families who said, if you have kids, we'll help you. And they all agreed to come and spend, sporadic months with us to oversee the, childcare worker. Because it's not that we asked them to do the childcare themselves. We were afraid to leave an infant with a childcare worker we knew nothing about.
Right.
There was no care.com who had vetted out the care workers those days. And we didn't have much money to pay a care worker either.
Right.
So we had all of these negatives. And so if the family didn't exist, if my husband was not as supportive as he was, I could not have kept my job.
I love that you said it's very important to try to find the right partner. It is a bit of a crapshoot, but I will say, do you think prioritizing your partner as much as you prioritize your career is something important?
Well, you've heard me talk about the fact that my husband often says my list is PepsiCoo, 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 then the kids, then your mother, and the bottom, I'm there. That's why he tells me that all the time. And I've always told him, hey, you're on that list.
You're on the
Just
list.
be happy,
You're on the
okay?
list. Yeah.
But the problem is, when you have a job, doesn't matter if you're CEO, okay? Maybe not 3 PepsiCos, maybe one PepsiCo, okay, if you're just working. But between a job and kids, you can't shirk your job because that pays the bills. And you want a job. You want economic freedom. If you have kids, you're the mom, so they need you. If you have an aging parent, you're the daughter. They need you. The person that hurts the most is the spouse. There's no question about it. And that's why it's very important that you and your spouse have a similar value system, because if not, it could lead to clashes. And they too should have a respect and love and responsibility for the family like you do.
Yes.
If they say, hey, I want date night every other week, what date night? If my kids would say, what date night? I need you at home, Mom.
Right.
Okay, I'm at home. My kids always took precedence over my husband, even today. And my husband reminds me about that, even though he does the same for his parents. So I think the value system was the same.
Indra, it's a rare thing, I've heard from many friends, that you and I have maintained a long-term marriage with the same man and still managed our careers. I get this all the time from my girlfriends.
Yes.
I don't know if you're angels or they're angels.
I don't know. The one thing I heard you and inspired me, because I have this philosophy too, and I heard you say this, is like, you leave the CEO at the door.
Yes. This is a very famous quote of yours, Indra, that you stopped being the PepsiCo CEO and then you were mom at home and wife at home. I've thought of that many times, actually. It's hard to do, but I love that you decided to do that consciously.
You have no choice.
You have to turn it off, and that, again, my husband's in the audience, but like, we go out to eat. I don't want to make the choices of where we go, what do we even order, what are we doing on weekends? Like, I just let a lot of decisions go that you have to run a household and have a balanced family life. Because if you're constantly acting like the CEO at home, then no one wants to be married to you. I have to be honest, right?
That is true.
Yeah.
I would have a tough time being married to me.
Yeah.
Seriously, oh God.
Same.
That's very good. I love that. Okay, let me take it back into the workforce for a moment here to talk a little bit about, Indra, you've been a really strong advocate for workplace diversity. And obviously a lot of DEI programs, initiatives, just the vibe and the feeling and the mood around DEI is somewhat divided right now. What do you think works and what doesn't work?
See, the problem is when you take DEI, which is intended to be a talent management program, and make it a program, just a lot of metrics, lots of people manning a DEI office, you've taken the focus away from what it was intended to be. When I looked at diversity, I didn't look at it as I have to have a program called diversity. It's like, how do we get the best and brightest to come and work in PepsiCo? It was a merit issue. It wasn't a numbers issue. The problem is that you want to cast the net wide and recruit from every college, from every background, from every color, from every gender. You want to really draw from the widest possible base. And to do that, you've got to demonstrate that you've got a big tent and everybody is welcome. Okay? There are companies that have taken DEI to the extreme where the CEO tells a DEI group, keep me out of trouble. Just report the metrics and make sure I've got the right representation, even if it's one body in every matrix. To me, that's what's torpedoed DEI. If you think about it as a strictly talent acquisition, development, retention program, it's a whole different approach to DEI. And I think, let's not even call it DEI, just let's call it sort of a broad-based talent acquisition, retention, and development, because that's what it is and should be.
Sheila, for you in building the companies that you have and hiring the people that you have at the executive levels, what are you paying attention to when it comes to finding the talent that you need?
I've always had, it's interesting, our tagline at care.com is there for you, and I'm still using the same kind of concept at Ohai and building the culture where THERE, transparency, humility, entrepreneurship, respect, and excellence. It is the same value set that I have had in building companies. And it's super important to me that it gets to be a place where we can be real. And that means my former CFO at Care.com was very open to me when both his parents were ill and he needed to be home and take time off. We figured it out for him, right? My co-founder now at Ohai, she's been with me. She was our first employee at Care.com. And I've seen her get married. She now has Alma, and she's now a mom, and so, and she juggles all of that. And it's just part of the commitment that I've made around, again, this humanity within AI is we can be in technology, but rather than replacing who we are as humans, how do we actually enhance that? And that includes building a great culture to work at and to focus on the long term and invest in your people.
That says so much about you that you have these people who have been with you for so many years through the toughest times. Building a company is not for the weak. It is long hours, it is continuous, it's 24/7 sometimes, especially in the beginning. Especially in the spaces where you were, starting when you did. How did you get the guts to say, I'm gonna build this, and how did you get the money? Because we hear notoriously that funding, VC funding for women is like, I don't know what the stats are, they're so low.
2.3% of funding goes to women founders.
2.3%, so that means 98% goes to male founders.
That's right.
How do you survive in that environment?
It was hard. It's interesting, the word guts. I don't know that I focused on guts back then when I started Care.com. In fact, I paused the business plan. Instead, I was insecure that I was going to do a female-focused business, and here I was graduating with a JD MBA and in technology, and felt like I should be doing something more important and bigger. And I had a mentor take me out to a meal and sit me down and said, this is in your heart. Are you in the pain business or the pleasure business? Because I was considering a hot mobile entertainment company, and that he considered that the pleasure business. The pain business is to solve people's problems. And my previous jobs were, you promise, helping people save money for college, and another one helping people find jobs, Vicky. And so for me, I was like, wait, the clarity of what's in my heart far and above was more important. But my insecurity was getting in the place around how am I going to be perceived? Because like as Indra mentioned, back then, there weren't a lot of female founders. And so I didn't want to be one of the first that got labeled that focused on female-centric businesses. And I wanted to be like tougher and viewed to be doing a bigger business that men do. And I just took a step back after that mentoring lunch and said, what's more important? What's in here? What purpose-driven life do I want? And thank God he took me out to lunch then. And we started Care.com because it's made a difference in people's lives. And that was more important.
That mentorship, very important, sponsorship as well. Indra, tell us a little bit about that. Who were some people that you think may have spoken about you in rooms where you were not present, who may have opened doors for you? And how do you recommend that people who need those mentors and sponsors go about trying to foster those relationships?
I am a product of mentoring. I think through my entire life, people have mentored me. I didn't even know they were my mentors, but they lifted me up, they pushed me, they supported me, they talked about me. They told me when I did things wrong, and they kicked me. And so I've been through that whole cycle. I think mentors pick you, you don't pick them. If you go to somebody and say, can you be my mentor? What are they supposed to do for you? I get maybe a letter every 2 days. Can you please mentor me? I don't even know these people. What am I supposed to do? And so a real mentor or a supporter, you can try to sort of divvy these two words up, but a real mentor has an influence over the trajectory of your career or the trajectory of your life. If that person is not able to influence that trajectory, then they can be an advisor to you. They really cannot be a mentor or a supporter. So all the CEOs that I worked with at PepsiCoo, in some shape or form, were my mentors. All my clients, when I was at BCG, stayed my mentors long after I stopped working at BCG. In fact, when I became CEO, I started to get letters from those CEOs saying, remember, I was one of your early mentors and supporters. I'm sure I had a say or a hand in you becoming CEO. And I wrote back saying, dear Bill, you're absolutely right. Let me give you some incidents where you taught me things that I carry with me even today that stood me in good stead as I rose up the corporate career. So I think with mentors, you have to be grateful to them. You have to thank them. Tell them when you're not going to listen to their advice, because you have to make them feel important in your life. And realize that having a mentor is a gift. It's not something that just comes to you. It's a gift. Cherish it a lot.
So if you can't go up and ask somebody, will you be my mentor? And that relationship needs to form naturally. Are you saying that these mentors took an interest in you because they saw that you were doing the work, because they noticed you were going the extra mile on a project? What do you think it was that drew them to you to advocate for you?
The work, the quality of the work, not just the extra mile. The fact that if you gave Indra a project, it was going to get done well. And I had no life outside the home and the office. So, for example, one of the two CEOs before me at PepsiCoo, he would go for weekends with the boys to Cayman Islands or to Montana, and they would golf and fish and horseback ride and barbecue and drink. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't barbecue, I don't fish, I'm a vegetarian, I don't horseback ride.
Yeah.
And I have kids at home.
Yeah.
And I have a husband at home. What am I supposed to do? So I was just relieved that he didn't invite me to any of the weekends. I was relieved because I would have had to say no, all right? But I did tell him one thing. I said, look, you don't have to invite me because I'm not coming. I wouldn't know what to do except sit in the hotel room. And it's not even a hotel, it's a cabin, all right? So don't invite me. However, if you make a single decision that relates to the business in your meeting and hand it off to me to work on it, I will not do it.
Ooh, you drew a boundary.
Totally. And you know what? There was not a single decision made by Roger with the boys when they went off on those weekends, because his point was, she won't work on it. Not only that, she'll give me the cold shoulder and it'll be hell to pay. So I'm not going to make a single business call at these retreats. And he followed through. The 5 years he was CEO, he never made a business decision in these Cayman Island, whatever.
And because you spoke up.
Because I had to do the work, okay?
Yeah,
so I think and this is something I'll say to all of you, men and women, I think you've got to stop and ask yourself, what is my proposition to the company? Not what am I good at? What is your proposition? When somebody is talking about you, what will they tell others that you're damn good at? If you don't have with clarity that proposition, then you're just another good worker, okay? In my case, every CEO I worked with would say, you give the most complex project to Indra, she'll simplify it, take it down to its root segments, somehow put it back together and come back with an answer that even a CEO can understand. Because CEOs are assumed to be dumb. Because there's so much on their plate, they can't know everything, right? So you want people around you who simplify the complex, somehow get it done through others. That was my proposition. Ask yourself, what is your proposition? What should other people say you're very good at? If that is not clear, you have a problem right there in terms of how far you can go in the company and whether you can move forward. Because there is a very insidious math here. Let me tell you what it is. Every organization is a pyramid. It is not a cylinder. It's a pyramid. And I'll give you some numbers from a PepsiCoo perspective. At the entry level of management, there's about 15,000 managers worldwide. By the time you get to CEO -3, you're down to 300 or 400. CEO -1, you're down to 15. Then you have one CEO. So you've got to go through this process of attrition to get to the top if you have a desire to be in the C-suite. But while you're doing that, the world around you is changing. So you have to become even better as you move up in order to move up and keep your job. Fully recognizing one thing, if you are not superb at your job in senior levels, it's up or out because people below you are waiting to push you out. So this is not a simple thing to ascend in a corporate career. It's a tough thing to move up that pyramid. So unless you're willing to sign up to be insatiably curious about the world around you, develop your skills, and make sure that you're better than people around you so that you have a right to keep your job and to move ahead, you're not going to move ahead. Don't say that, hey, I deserve to be a CEO. Being a CEO in the C-suite is very, very difficult, and it's a privilege. Just remember that.
It is, and it's to serve. And what's so interesting is not only you're hearing that the hard work has to be there, and you got to work 24/7 to get there, and it's really hard to go from founding to stay for 13 and a half years and maintain the job and then take it public. I had to prove that I can found a company and then run a public company, which was really hard. The other thing that I would add beyond the hard work is I started to learn more about myself and how you distinguish, I call it the two eyes. When you enter into the room, did you impress or did you inspire? You start to ask yourself, because your mentors and sponsor help pull you up, right? But also all the people that work with you, they're gonna say, I wanna work with Indra. I'm gonna follow Indra. I'm gonna go on her team, right? That's the thing that needs to happen within a company. So if you're constantly focused on impressing and impressing and impressing, then the people behind closed doors aren't gonna promote you when there's a vote or when there's happening that says, Indra's gonna be the best CEO for us because she inspires us. That has to be part of your value prop, because if you don't, it's very hard to rise beyond the competent. I've seen great, competent, hardworking, super smart people, but all they did was the eye, the eye, the eye, the eye. To impress, 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 and then no one wanted to vote for them to be the CEO.
That's a great point, Sheila, because I think to be a developer of people is a very unselfish thing. Because if you did a really good job developing people, they might in fact take your job. So most leaders, when somebody is rising up and is very, very good, they try to put them down because they're afraid they have no place to go. I'm sure many of you have had that experience. So it takes an unusual person to develop a great person underneath them. They have to be confident. And there's a great line which somebody told me, the difference between a number one and a number two is a constant. So if you want to pull up the organization, you've got to pull yourself up. There's always that constant gap between you and the next person. So to be a leader, you've got to constantly reinvent yourself and pull up people behind you.
It's like a master class in being a high capacity individual, isn't it? I'm taking so many notes. I have 3 daughters at home, and if they could just please, like breathe in this air and sort of understand. And I think what you lead with a lot of humility too, which is very interesting in hearing how you talk about the ways that you move. Here's my question about feedback. Were you relentless about seeking feedback? And when you seek feedback, who are you getting it from? And how are you parsing it? How are you deciding, oh, that is good for me, I want to incorporate that, or thank you for that feedback, and it is not for me?
I really believe in the 360, and I'm not just doing it lip service. I learn from all parts of the company, as well as people in my life. And I will say, I even get feedback from my sons. Will sit me down and say, Mom, you're being really intense, and have a real conversation. I just did it with my son today over lunch. And he's like, I'm not so comfortable having this conversation in front of Dad. Can we have it one-on-one? Like, we can have that kind of conversation and just keeping it real. And I think so much of it is, and Indra touched on this, it's a secureness in yourself and just knowing yourself. Knowing your value prop, as Indra was saying, but it's knowing your truth and just being super honest with yourself about that. Because then when someone's giving you feedback, it's actually a gift, because they're taking the risk unselfishly, risking the relationship with you. That's how I always see it, to be brave enough to tell you the truth of what they think, right? Or what they perceive. And that actually helps you. So I think if you flip it around the frame psychologically that says this is a gift, and I'm not just giving it lip service. If you read all these books like, oh, feedback's like a gift. But you actually have to believe that and have the humility to say this person cares deeply enough about me, unselfishly, to grow. If I believe that, then I'm all ears because I want to grow.
So feedback is a difficult subject because most people are conflict avoiders. They don't like to tell you that you're not doing things right to your face, but behind your back, they're saying, you know, not sure this person has potential. In fact, for women in particular, they say, yeah, she delivered on all her objectives, but I'm not sure she has potential. So it's a very common thing. If you look at performance appraisal forms, okay, you'll have 4 or 5 objectives. Then you'll have a self-assessment, manager's assessment, and the last page is about 4 inches, which says, any other comments? Let me tell you how it works. If the objective is laid out, if the self-assessment is very long, that means you missed the goal. Just remember that, okay? Because you use a lot of words to explain why you didn't make the goal and try to make it look like you made the goal. And a typical manager doesn't read what you write. They will write there, yes, he did a good job. That's all. Most performance appraisals, and I would read 400 every year because I would get above band 4 at PepsiCoo, the books, and I would look through them. And then the final, where it says any other comments, it'll say, Bob's a good guy. He delivered a good performance for food service. And I go, what does this say about the person? Nothing. Missed the objectives. The boss didn't read the details. And the summary feedback is cursory. So I did something different. I said, tell you what, I don't care how you self-assess yourself. I'm going to write you a letter. So for all my direct reports, for all the time I was at PepsiCoo, I would write them a 3 or 4 page letter at the end of every year. And then I'd do a mid-year calibration. The letter would talk about what did they do right during the year? What did they miss during the year? What do they need to demonstrate next year? And what potential do they have? And what more beyond just the next year do they need to learn and demonstrate? So when time came for the CEO, for the board to pick a CEO, they had for those 5 candidates an entire dossier of 360s, manager quality metrics, MQPI. They had an organizational psychologist who looked at the arc of the performance, and they had my letters for 5 years, the 4-page letters for 5 years, which tracked how that person did. And the individual themselves had total clarity on their performance and what they needed to do. And so if you're not willing to take the time to do a very good performance appraisal, that means you're looking at performance appraisal as a evil that you have to do, as opposed to this is the most valuable document that I can give the employee. Again, as I said, it's time consuming, but you've got to do it if you care about your people.
Sheila, you were born and raised in the Philippines. You grew up in a very entrepreneurial household that involved a number of businesses, coconut mills, mango and banana plantations, transportation, and coal production. So I do wonder, what do you think it takes to make a successful entrepreneur? And by success, I don't necessarily mean financially, but I mean someone who has created something, created jobs, made the world better in some way.
Definitely grit. It's not easy. A sense of perseverance. And I was just coaching one of my co-founders today. I think, we read a lot of books, and yes, you have to be scrappy, but you also have to believe in a vision. You have to believe in an idea because it's so hard, day in, day out. You're constantly talking to yourself about the vision, talking to your team about the vision, talking to investors about your vision. You have to believe, and really push yourself. Get up every day. The other thing I often give advice is startups and building companies are really hard. It's not for everybody. And the reason for that is because if you find, and you got to know yourself really well, if you are easily swayed by bad news, and then you feel like, okay, dumpy day. If you are easily buoyed by good news, and you're like, celebrate, let's go out for champagne, okay? You will be disappointed in a startup because the startup life is up and down and up and down. And so I often coach my teams and the companies I've built is, you gotta stay even keeled. Don't drink your own Kool-Aid when things are going well. I often talk to the company about that. And then when it's like low, don't beat yourself up. you got to pick yourself back up every day and get out there and have the vision, believe, and really have grit to push, because you're the one trying to convince everyone and the whole world that this product and solution needs, that the society needs it, and it's going to make a difference in the world. So you've got to really believe.
Indra, you both have children. I'm curious if you want them to follow in your footsteps in terms of working in the corporate world, following a profession the way that you did, and if not, or if so, what do you think you and your husband have taught your children from your own professional experiences?
See, first of all, I'm in awe of you, Sheila, because I could never do a startup. I'm much more of the need a regular job, work in a corporate world, move ahead. So I'm a plodder that way. And
Yes.
you, amazing what you've done. So kudos to you. Really, I'm in awe of you. With my kids, I've told them, be whatever you want to be. Because the great thing with having us as parents is that they don't have to worry about debts, college debts carrying over, whatever. We breeze as kids for them, for their future. So they can do whatever they want. Literally, whatever you want, go do it. We're there to support you. If you want to get married and have kids, give them to us. We will bring them up. So you've got in us.
Yes.
You don't have to import us from anywhere. We're right there.
Yes.
Okay, wherever you are, we'll come to you. And we just want grandkids, that's all, So they're very fortunate that way.
I love it.
Of course, it's not easy to have a mom like me, I'll be honest with you, but on balance, the scorecard is pretty good, I would say. And
say.
so I want my kids to dream, do whatever they want. And if they want to be stay-at-home moms, that's okay. If they want to work, do something part-time, that's okay. But don't just fritter away your life.
Can
Do
I
something.
just build on this, on
Yes,
the Asian
please, Sheila.
culture
Yes.
that we love is that, I just shared with you, I moved to New York because, I lived in Boston for 30 years. And my older son decided that he was going to propose. Of course, Chloe, my daughter-in-law, didn't know at the time. But I immediately looked at my husband and I said, we are moving to New York because we're 10 minutes away now. I'm now a grandmother. And Cecilia is beautiful. She's 5 months old. And my priority in life are just my kids and my grandkids. I mean, we will go wherever. And I've given up so many job opportunities based on where my kids were and what made sense for us to be closer together as a family.
Sheila, you look like you're 40, so I don't know. You don't look like a grandma, but that's okay.
It's the Asian in both of us.
Yeah, that's right.
God, look at her. Whoa. Amazing.
As they say, Asian don't raisin. I will say, what a vote.
Yes, that's true.
Never heard that before.
Well, good. I'm glad I taught Indra something today. Mark it down. Mark it down.
A lot.
So I will say this, you've both spoken about the importance of multi-generational homes, and I love that as one myself with my parents here who moved from California to New York 6 years ago when this network job came up. And I have those 3 daughters, and I just do think there's a lot to be said about how that makes it possible. It does take a village. It does take having peace of mind that your children are at home, being cared for in the best possible way, so that you can go 100% when you're at work and not worry about them. I think, just a final thought. I think we're going to open it up for a few questions in the audience. But if you could, what is a habit, a ritual, something you do that you think has really helped you, in terms of staying balanced, in terms of pursuing your professional pursuits, but what makes you happy? What brings you joy?
Go ahead.
Let's start. So in my 20s, I landed in the hospital after traveling 3 weeks, covering 6 countries when I was doing telecom consulting. And I ended up really worried because I was the breadwinner in our family, that if I didn't take care of my health, how was I going to sustain
In your 20s,
this?
you were the breadwinner in your family.
Yes. My husband actually decided he wanted to go in social work. And so and then he ended up going to business school after that. But during those periods, I was very worried about how I was going to maintain and how do I manage stress. So I started meditating. I started meditating in my 20s more to manage stress. And then I started to realize that meditation actually helped me be a better leader because it allowed me to have more self-awareness. And then now I'm doing transcendental meditation twice a day, 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the afternoon. And I'm telling you, it's the best thing. It feels like a bear hug. I get to hug myself twice a day, and it feels so good. So I highly encourage it. Now, I've been doing it for different reasons throughout the last, 3 decades, but it's one of the best things I've ever done for my mental health and my overall well-being.
I should take something like that up because my sister is big in TM, and I try it, and my brain is racing. I'm like, I can't give you half an hour for TM.
We're gonna chat. You're gonna love
my
it.
brain won't shut down, so that's a problem.
Okay, so it's not meditating for you.
I like reading.
Okay.
If I really want to calm down, I'll read some silly romance book, Danielle Steele or stuff like that, because there's no value to those books, right?
Well, don't tell Danielle that. There's value.
No. What I mean is, there's incredible value. But the problem is, it's not like a historical book or a scientific book where you have to,
No.
Chapter to chapter. The starting, the middle, the end. It's just put together a different way. So I'll read this stuff and say, I know exactly how this is going to end. Let's see if it ends that way. So,
But
I read so much.
But it's freeing up our minds, right? Rather than to focus on random things of our to-do list and other things. It's just how do we
Calms
just
the mind.
Yeah.
You're giving your minds rest. That is one of your daily rituals.
The newest thing I'm doing, which I would not advise you to do, is binge watching shows.
Oh.
I've never done that. Somebody told me I had to watch a show called The Good Wife.
Oh, yeah,
But
it's
they
good.
didn't tell me it was 7 seasons and 24 episodes per season.
And how good it is.
And I
Addictive.
started watching it, and I loved it. And there I am. The great thing is you can fast forward.
Sure.
But I'm binge watching 7 seasons, 24 episodes, and then in season 5, something bad happens, and I cry for 2 days. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? It's a TV show.
But we didn't do this in our career. Like, I miss Friends. I miss Seinfeld.
Yeah,
I missed all those
I'm
shows.
watching all of
Yeah,
that
yeah.
now.
Yes, I'm catching
Yeah.
up now.
I watched Sex and the City 5 years ago, so I'm behind the curve, but
I still haven't watched that one.
that's okay. Goodbye.
I have another one for you.
24 times 7.
Never Have I Ever. Mindy Kaling's show, Never Have I Ever. That's a really good one. That can be
I
your
saw
next
that.
one.
I saw that
you
one
did already.
in
Okay.
real time. Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Pachenko.
Which one?
Pachinko, yes.
Pachinko, no.
The book is
Pachinko,
excellent
really
as
good.
well.
I like that Korean sea store. Which one is that? Canadian.
It's
Min Jin
Pachenko,
Lee's
yeah.
book.
Yeah.
It's based on Min
No,
Jin
I
Lee's
saw
book.
the Korean sea store from Canada. What was that?
Oh, yes. Mr. Kim's Convenience.
Yeah.
Mr.
Oh,
Kim's
Kim's
Convenience. Yeah, that was
and
good.
the incredible attorney Wu.
Oh,
I got to watch that one.
Oh, that was fantastic.
there you go. Some summer watching and reading for you all. Did we have any questions in the audience? Does anybody have a microphone? Oh, boy. I
Any
see
more
lots of
TV?
hands. I'm going to let
Can't
our...
see,
folks-
but maybe somebody's handing the microphones because we
Yes.
can't really.
There it is right there.
Yeah, there you go.
Hi, Indra and Sheila, thank you guys so much. My name is Kamal Haq. I'm the founder of a nonprofit. And actually, why I'm here today is I teach a public health class. So instead of class, I brought my class here. They're all here. There's 10 of us. And
Thank you.
our class was going to be on social capital. And what does that mean? So our class is healthcare in communities. And what does that mean? And so this question, Indra, is specifically for you. You've done so much amazing work. Specifically for me as a South Asian woman, so much of your leadership resonates, but also you've donated to amazing causes. You've donated to the School of Public Health. I just wanted to hear more about how you use your social capital, and when we're working in communities, what does that look like? What advice could you give to our class, public health students that are studying during this time of a lot of, public health distrust, funding has been cut. It's a volatile environment. So your words of wisdom.
Well, my interest in public health came about because when COVID happened, our governor in Connecticut called me up and said, I want you to co-chair Reopen Connecticut, along with the head of public health at Yale, who I'd never met before. And he called me on a Saturday. Sunday, I drove up in an absolutely deserted town. I drove up to New Haven, and I met Albert Coe. And I said, Albert, teach me public health. I know nothing about it. So for the next 4 hours, he gave me a 2-year tutorial on a degree course in public health. Told me all about how it works and what I needed to know. And I taught him a bit of economics about livelihoods and how we bring lives and livelihoods together. And then Connecticut was at the leading edge of reopening. In fact, most states borrowed our playbook to reopen industries. And so it was wonderful to have business and public health come together, because in many ways, public health without the business makes no sense, and business without a good public health system cannot be successful. So the two came together. And since then, we've given a lot to the Yale School of Public Health, because we believe that, especially in this global world, diseases know no boundaries, pandemics know no boundaries. And so when they spread, it impacts economics, it impacts livelihoods, it impacts the morale of people so profoundly. Look at what COVID did to us. And we still haven't learned the lessons from COVID. And so we're giving generously to the School of Public Health, to Albert Coe and what he does with infectious diseases, because I think that individuals who have resources should step up and fund public health, because it's such an essential part of life as we know it. And so those of you in public health and public health schools, thank you for being in the public health schools. You are a critical part of a successful society in the future. Keep doing what you're doing. Everything goes in cycles. This too shall pass. Okay?
There is a reception after this that will go from 7 to 7:45, I believe, upstairs on the first floor of the Asia Society. If you could please join me in putting your hands together one more time for Indra and Sheila.